The one thing that Donald Trump doesn't like is people getting more publicity than him, or the idea that they're somehow leveraging their relationship with him for their own gain. So so far, the bromance has held. But the question is, what happens?
The new team entrusted with delivering Donald Trump's agenda is taking shape. Several contentious hires have been put forward in his proposed administration. They've got to be approved by Congress or the Senate. The latest controversial appointment is former World Wrestling Entertainment CEO and his transition co-chair, Linda McMahon, as Education Secretary. I've been reading into her CV. It's not as weird as it sounds, although it might be. Earlier this month, McMahon spoke at the America First Policy Institute Gala about her history working alongside Trump.
The story of the America First movement is deeply personal for me because I've had the privilege, I don't know if you have, anybody in the room has had, but I've had the privilege of being a business partner, a cabinet member, and a friend to Donald Trump for nearly 30 years. I witnessed both his business savvy and his deep love for his family and for our country, and that means for all of you in this room. When I served as the head of the Small Business Administration, the President and I worked together to achieve his vision of an economy on rocket fuel. And even after the devastating 2020 election, we knew we could not let our momentum stall.
She's even adopted some of his vocal mannerisms. That was Linda McMahon. Now, Trump has criticised the Department of Education, has promised to close it down. So whether that's going to be McMahon's job after he returns to the White House in January 2025, we will discuss. The move comes as the US House Committee on Ethics met on Capitol Hill today as calls grow for it to release details of an investigation into Matt Gaetz over alleged sexual misconduct and illicit drug use. The former congressman has been elected to serve as Trump's US Attorney General. And he's also said that he wants Mehmet Oz, a celebrity doctor and former TV host whose approaches have come under scrutiny, to lead the Centres for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Laura Trevelyan is a journalist, ex-BBC anchor who's been covering politics in the United States since 2004. Good evening, Laura.
Good evening, Nick. How are you doing?
I mean, Linda McMahon, and I've seen some of the videos. I mean, she isn't just chief executive of WWF. She's got into the ring with some of these fighters and staged mock fights as part of the hoopla that surrounds this this wrestling phenomenon in the States. How serious are her credentials as a pick for Education Secretary?
Well, she was a French teacher briefly. But she's a loyal Trumpist, which I think this is the key point in all of these appointments. It's not your suitability for the role or your experience. It is your fierce loyalty to the incoming president. And she is fiercely loyal to him. And she was in his previous administration. So I think really what's going on here, Nick, is just this power struggle, or not really power struggle, but the incoming president telling Republicans, whether in the Senate or in the House, you need to get in line. I won this election. We won all three branches of elected government. These are the people that I want. You can't question me. Remember that the president has told Senate Republicans he wants to appoint his cabinet via what's called a recess appointment, which means this, by the way, goes back to the days when senators went everywhere on horseback. So you couldn't get them all together to approve the president's cabinet appointments. So the president was allowed to make recess appointments when he couldn't get the Senate together to scrutinize his nominees. And Senate Republicans are currently deciding whether or not they will give in to what President Trump is demanding. And of course, if he was able to get recess appointments, he could appoint all of these people and Senate Republicans could do nothing about it. So it's a pretty interesting time, a big test for the Constitution. Will Senate Republicans stand up for their constitutional right to vet the president's nominees for his cabinet, or won't they?
And even if they do, it then becomes a loyalty test. And there is that suspicion that he's doing this deliberately. He is testing the loyalty of the Senate Republicans, and those who vote against his picks will find themselves frozen out or potentially in danger of losing their seats if a MAGA candidate runs against them. How does that work?
Well, the only Senate Republicans who are safe in this situation are the ones who still have 6 years to go in their term, because they can be confident of outlasting President Trump. But it is a very difficult and interesting situation. And as you say, it is all about a loyalty test. If 2 weeks before the election, then candidate Donald Trump had said that he was going to appoint Matt Gaetz as the Attorney General, Tulsi Gabbard as the Director of National Intelligence, someone who Russian state TV has celebrated the idea that she could be in this key role looking at appointments. RFK Jr., a vaccine skeptic. I mean, we did know that he was going to get a big job in health. Donald Trump said that, but he's, being proposed for Health and Human Services. But if all of these had been mentioned as what Donald Trump was going to actually do, there would have been a real furore ahead of the election. But the fact that he's doing it now when he's won, he's just daring Senate Republicans to stand him down. And it's really just not clear what they're going to do at all. On the Matt Gaetz case, where, as you said, this House Ethics Committee has declined to release the report on him because he's resigned as a member of Congress. So that's the protocol. But Senate Republicans have said that they will want to see that report as part of doing their due diligence.
And Matt Gaetz does appear to be the most controversial pick by far, simply because of the scale of allegations against him. I'm not sure how many can actually be repeated here, but they are very, very serious. The illicit drug use, the alleged underage sex, the extraordinary things that appear to be almost common knowledge or treated as sound gossip on Capitol Hill. And the idea that Trump would put him in that position, really, I did think blindside a lot of Republicans who are going to be asked to approve it. Is that going to be the hill on which some Republicans are going to choose to die, or do you think this is all just game playing?
Well, I think if there are currently 4 extremely controversial cabinet picks by incoming President Trump. And Matt Gaetz seems by far the most vulnerable as Attorney General, not just because, as you say, the nature of the allegations against him, essentially paying underage girls for sex, but also he's not popular with his colleagues. He's made the mistake of, he was instrumental in the toppling of Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. He has been extremely rude about a number of Senate Republicans. He called the current Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, McFailure. So there's no love lost at all between Matt Gaetz and his colleagues. But the Vice President-to-be, J.D. Vance, was taking Matt Gaetz around Capitol Hill today, taking him to meetings with key senators. I mean, wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall in those meetings in which Matt Gaetz says, I love you really, I do respect the rule of law. This is just a little local difficulty, this stuff with the Ethics Committee. I mean, it's really hard to know how it plays out. But if Senate Republicans don't let the president get his pick for Attorney General, they will feel under immense pressure to let him have his pick for Director of National Intelligence and for Health and Human Services. So it's just going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out.
Elon Musk is sort of hovering around this whole thing. He's been given the Department of Governmental, I can't remember what the actual DOGE stands for, but it's efficiency, yes. Isn't it? Yeah, that's right. Trump appeared at Elon Musk's SpaceX launch last night, didn't he? And there is gossip that is sort of filtering back that he's kind of outstaying his welcome. He's a mercurial character, isn't Mr. Musk? And do you think he could be overplaying his hand?
Well, the one thing that Donald Trump doesn't like is people getting more publicity than him, or the idea that they're somehow leveraging their relationship with him for their own gain. So so far, the bromance has held. But the question is, what happens? And we'll be able to see. It's like Kremlinology. Will Elon Musk still be at Mar-a-Lago 5 out of 7 days of every week? Will he still be going around the country with the incoming president? But there's much for Elon Musk to gain from having this close relationship with the incoming president. Elon Musk has a number of enormous government contracts. He could be in line for even more. I don't know whether you think there's a conflict of interest with someone who gets a lot of money from the government and also is going to be in charge of government efficiency. I mean, that's an interesting one right there. So we'll see what happens. But right now, Elon Musk is claiming that he was instrumental in President Trump's victory because of all of the money he spent on his super PAC to get out the vote, because of the way that he used Twitter to relentlessly promote Donald Trump. So, for now, the bromance is on, but whether it still is in 6 months, we'll see.
And of course, all this, it is parlor games to a certain degree, but they have real world implications. There are people with potentially hugely radical agendas who have now got their hands, or going to get their hands, on the levers of power. How much, I mean, there has been a lot of petticoat clutching among sort of left-leaning liberals about what the implications are going to be, but we've heard about Project 2025, which is, no doubt about it, a radical agenda. Are we going to see, when President Trump even takes control in January, some radical policies which could affect the entire world?
Well, the one pick from Project 2025, which was the Heritage Foundation's blueprint for a Trump second term, one person who wrote the chapter actually about regulating the communications industry is the president's pick for chairman of what's called the Federal Communications Commission. Now, President Trump has said he wants to take away the broadcast licenses of ABC, NBC, CBS, because of what he claims is fake news that's been broadcast on those channels, essentially. So that will be an interesting test. Does the FCC commissioner actually have the power to take away broadcast licenses? Is that something that would happen? Are there checks and balances? Is it open to a legal challenge? You know, all of this is what we're going to see after January the 20th and the inauguration.
Laura, always a privilege to pick your brains on this subject. Thank you very much for joining us here on Times Radio